Okay, so the rat dissection. We did some skinning. We identified external features. You should know that the whiskers are also called vibrissae or vibrissae. Um, you should be able to identify the gender. Okay. So in the muscles, I just said let's practice here. Let's get two of them. One of them is a pectoralis major. Okay, so you saw this V coming here. Maybe you saw this lower V, which was a pectoralis minor. If you wanted to label that as well, that'd be great. You don't have to. But pectoralis major we wanted to get. And then you saw like this kind of white line running down the middle. I wanted you to identify the external oblique, which is all the dark stuff to the side of it. Okay, external oblique. Oops. And then for back muscles, just a couple here. So one was the latissimus dorsi, which from the center of the back, it runs up here under the front limb, kind of like this underneath that stuff. So that would be the latissimus dorsi. And then you had another one kind of running up this way. I'll put it in blue, kind of coming up this way, which was the spinotrapezius. So we wanted to label those two. Okay. And then we opened up the abdominal cavity. So some things we want to look at, and we got to make sure that we put the functions down. That's where as you go through this, you see they list all the functions for all the things we're identifying, which is important. It's important to not just know where it's located, but also what it does. And a lot of times we can tell based on the function why it's located in a certain spot. So in the abdominal cavity, you could probably see if you want to remove these organs and take them out, you can. And then, but put them on like some paper towel or something somewhere where you could put them back in the rat to store it. Because what you can do there is if you take out the stomach, all right, so the stomach's here. If you take that out, you could see where the tube that comes in, the food tube, which is the esophagus. Otherwise, it's kind of tough to see. You got to dig under there, but you can definitely see where it comes into the stomach. The liver, of course, that's a big one. First thing you see when you open up the abdominal cavity. A lot of times we have to lift up the liver to see the stomach underneath. On the side over here, you have this kind of narrow tongue-shaped thing, the spleen. The pancreas, you may have seen it. If you've seen it, good. If you haven't seen it, maybe you want to go to another lab table and see if they found it. We have the intestines, of course. The small intestines will be first here. And they're going to meet at this junction here, this sac that I'm sure that you found in there, the cecum. Okay, and then from there on out, it's really just large intestine or colon. Okay. One other thing I wanted to point out was in between the intestines, there's this thin film that's filled with blood vessels to get nutrients and things, because that's where we're getting them from the intestines, right? That is called mesentery. That is the stuff that if you wanted to try to cut it to actually extend the intestines to see how large these things are, how long they are, because it's kind of amazing. They're all balled up and wadded up in there, and if you actually straighten them out, they cover a lot of ground. So that's the mesentery, the thin film in between the intestines. And then we go to the chest, the thoracic cavity. So here's functions for things that you need to get here. Okay. So, yeah. And in the chest, so we have the stomach here. Okay, this is the stomach and the chest, right? No, it's a heart. All right. So the heart, we have the atria on top, right and left atria. Remember, it's not for you looking at it, it's for the rat laying there. So it's right and left atrium. The larger part at the bottom, this is going to be where we see the ventricles down here, the majority of it. Um, and then I wanted you to try to see if you probably have to cut out the heart. But you're going to be able to see, at least see openings for where the aorta goes. They call this the aortic arch. Can't talk. And then there's also an artery here running out underneath it that's going to branch to the lungs, and that's called pulmonary. Anytime you hear pulmonary, they're talking about lungs. So we want to see the atria, left and right. We want to see the ventricles. We want to definitely see the trachea. The trachea is easy to see because the trachea has like these little rings of cartilage around it. Okay. And we definitely want to know the lungs as well. Anything I'm missing here? And functions. And then circulatory system, I'm not going to have you do much with that, but you should know, here's something, another term, renal, because you will see this with the kidneys. So here are the kidneys. They're on the very back dorsal side of the rat. You'll see them underneath. And then you'll also be able to see little renal arteries going to the kidneys there. All right, so we can identify the kidneys. And then we should be able to go on to the last part, which is reproductive. So you're going to want to kind of maybe see if you have a male rat, look at a female rat, somebody else's. If you have a female, vice versa. But we should be able to see really easy these uterine horns coming off to each side. All right, so we want to see those, and we want to see the ovaries are at the end of them here. Okay? And where they come together is the vagina. You might notice a piece sticking up here, the bladder. And again, this shows the kidneys. So I showed those in the last picture, but we should definitely identify kidneys, renal artery I talked about. And that's female. And then with the male, might be tougher to see some of this stuff, but maybe we can see the bladder coming out here. You can open up the scrotum to see the testes. Maybe see the epididymis to it. And possibly even see the vas deferens coming off it, the tube coming off. All right. And I think we'll be good to go.